All right, so we're back. We're talking about Transformers: The Last Night some more.
Yeah.
We may or may not have 30 minutes.
37 minutes of because my phone might have hooked up
recorded.
into the Bluetooth here. So anyway,
but yeah, so we were talking about the cast in this is so weird. It's like the fact that so many people want to work with Michael Bay in spite of the fact that like it doesn't seem like his movies are doing or saying anything.
I guess it's cat. Why else would Anthony Hopkins? It has to be literally like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. I mean, not that he can't probably do. I would hope that he has money at this point, but like, it has to be just $1 million. But
yeah, but so God, there was so much just. And again, like, I felt like the story of this movie was so much better and made so much more sense than the story of the other Transformers movie I've seen. And but
that's really saying something.
Well,
I guess there's an arc. It's like how they got there.
Yeah, and that's exactly
was the roadmap to getting there was illogical and not in a, like, it wasn't Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we had multiple storylines going on the same. It was kind of a straight line, but
And let's talk for a minute before we go. Let's talk about Tony Hale. Okay, so Tony Hale's character, this is I think he's a NASA scientist. Certainly he's a scientist. And he's first introduced when Cybertron, the Transformers home planet, is on a collision course with Earth, a la Armageddon.
Yeah.
And
so many things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he is explaining the technical and mathematical and kind of physics elements of this.
Yeah.
And he's being blown off by some like dickhead politician in Illyria.
Basically like a chief of staff. Yeah.
And who's just like, you're boring. Science is boring.
This is ridiculous.
And he's like, well, just tell me if it's a threat. That's all I care about is if it's a threat.
Yeah.
And Tony Hale's like, no, you idiot, because a threat might kill you. This will kill you in 3 days.
Yeah.
And then the next time we see him, he is in like the NASA control center. And by this point we have discovered that like Merlin was a real guy and the Knights of the Round Table were allied with the Transformers, and the staff that appeared to be magical that Merlin had is actually like a Cybertronian weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to explain all this to the world governments because the good guys are all trying to get after the staff.
Yep.
And Tony Hale's character's like, no, I'm not going to listen to this nonsense. It's magic and hobgoblin. Like, what the hell? The hobgoblins?
Yeah.
But so he says this, and then like, I've got a better idea. And he gives him this idea, like, okay, you launch a tactical nuke, because basically Cybertron, if you've ever seen like the image of like Krypton exploding, in the comic books, where you just see like little chunks of the planet blowing off in all directions, that's basically what Cybertron looks like, but it's in slow motion and it's all held together by wires.
Yeah.
Like, Cybertron makes its way to Earth, and the reason that we don't all die immediately, because the two planets don't collide into each other, is because Cybertron is like in little bits that are like a football field size long, and they all kind of bump into Earth at slow motion.
Yeah.
And so
do nothing to the atmosphere. All those sciencey type things, that actually Armageddon dealt
with pretty well.
Or not Armageddon and like Independence Day, because that's also the other one that's like Independence Day.
There's a lot of
like
Independence Day in this, like the talking heads montage of the news reports. So when we see Tony Hale again, he's like, I don't believe in this nonsense. Here, launch a tactical nuke against one of these series of wires. And he basically assumes that, like, okay, what'll happen is that it'll pendulum down. It will crash into the bad guy base.
Yeah.
And that once the bad guy base is, like, separated from Cybertron and is in free fall over the Earth, that the magical weapon that's been planted in the ground in the enemy base will stop having an effect and Earth will stop dying.
Yep.
And everything here works except that the magical weapon does not stop doing its thing, and Earth does not stop dying. All it means is that our heroes who were in the enemy base trying to obtain said weapon are now essentially in free fall as well, and have to be saved by the Transformers. And then in the end,
seems long, by the way. Like they're in free fall. They're not. I mean, they're not in outer space, which obviously
they're high in the atmosphere.
They're high in the atmosphere. But that scene is, and it's not like, oh, quick cuts. It feels like it takes. No, that scene's like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I will.
Like,
I will give
least.
him. I mean, the one thing that I thought was actually kind of well done is that Hot Rod has like his science-defying weapon in this movie, and Hot Rod's weapon is that he like shoots you with his special gun, and there's like a bubble, and time slows inside the bubble.
Yeah.
And everything goes in super slow motion.
Yeah.
And like he uses it to get away from the bad guys a couple times, and he blah 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 blah. And then in a key moment when the good guys are falling to their deaths, he shoots them, and time slows around them to a crawl, and the good guys are able to swoop in and save them, which was a cool, like it was actually set up. I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
But you're right. Other than like that moment within the 5 minutes, like that 5 minutes didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. No.
But so Tony Hale, like, you see him at the end, and it's like he's been trying to save the world this whole time, and he was frustrated because, like, you know, science, magic, whatever. First of all, his like indignation didn't make a lot of sense, but whatever.
Especially, I mean, we live in a world like the continual times where they basically, like the chief of staff or whatever guy in the room, like, wait, you don't really believe this NASA guy, even though you do live in a world where alien robots of massive size exist.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows this. It's common knowledge, and it's omnipresent in the world because you have this special task force and this whole thing. But no one, for some reason, believes that, oh, okay, so maybe it's not magic, but it's a thing that happens, okay? Like, it's actually specifically not magic.
Yeah.
Because it's a DNA thing. I mean, obviously, science.
Yeah. But so... And then we see him at the end, and everybody's celebrating that the world has been saved. And he's like sitting at the table with his head in his hands, like he's sad that his way of saving the world didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, were we supposed to think he's evil? Because when we're introduced to him, he's a very sympathetic character.
I think what that shot was the Apollo 13 shot. It was an homage to the Apollo 13, where the serious... He's sitting there and everybody else is celebrating.
Yeah.
And they do that, like, literally Family Guy made a joke about that scene. Because
I didn't read it that way. That makes sense. The way
but that's one of the problems with Michael Bay completely, is that he clearly watches other films and copies them. But he doesn't seem to get the reason or the surrounding bit.
Exactly. If that's an homage, then what it lost was the emotional integrity that made the other one make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like just having that same composition doesn't make
literally the last moment you saw him, he was like screaming, going, "Oh, those people are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about." And then you cut to the next. He wasn't the guy that was fighting for it all the time. You literally killed it with that last scene.
Yeah.
Which the thing worked. Which, by the way, was super weird. They must have like ran out of planes and bombs, because they only sent like 4 planes to take this thing on.
Yeah.
When it wasn't like Independence Day when they shot missiles at it and it didn't blow up. Everything fucking blew up, and it fucking worked great. You're like, oh my god, we have enough weapons to blow this thing up and take them out. Like,
there aren't really force fields in the world of Transformers, so everybody gets hit when they get shot. I mean, the one thing I was gonna, like, my first thought was like, just fucking atomize it, drop a bunch of nukes on this thing. And the only problem there, of course, becomes that if you were paying attention to real science, that then Cybertron drops like a stone onto Stonehenge and levels all of Europe.
Which also, by the way, weird. I think we only have like a couple more seconds, but also super weird that it's been 4 movies on now, and they haven't invented new weapons to take on Transformers. There's still bullets.
Yeah.
But Marky Mark has. He has special because he's an inventor. Who, by the way, can't name anything that he created, even though he's like, well, I created a gun that you can shoot a Transformer in the head and the head explodes.
Yeah, like, and it's like a joke because and it's the overeducated Ivy Tower princess is what he calls the woman. Yeah. She's British Megan Fox. Like she looks
exactly,
just like Megan Fox, and
it actually took me a moment.
Yeah, but there's the scene where she essentially challenges him, like, "Well, what do you have to offer?"
Yeah,
and his answer is like, "I'm an inventor," and then, oh, it's still recording.
Cool.
And then he can't name anything that he's invented.
Yeah.
So, it's. And unfortunately, if we don't figure out what happened to the audio, you won't see the other half an hour of this conversation.
We can, if not, we can jump on Google Hangout.
Yeah, exactly. We can try to rebuild it.
It weirdly takes a long time to try to explain the non-logic of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, if you like the Transformers movie and if you're emotionally invested in the Transformers movies, you probably will really enjoy this one.
Oh yeah, it's super Transformers and super Michael Bay.
Yeah.
Like,
and I will say, and I mean, this goes without saying at this point, probably because of the nature of those movies, but if you are a fan of the Transformers property from like animated series and cartoons and comic books and all that, don't expect, like, there are familiar concepts introduced in this Transformers movie that have almost nothing to do with the concepts that they represent in other media. Yeah. And the thing that we were talking about is that this movie is very much the movie where any pretense of Transformers as science fiction goes out the window in favor of Transformers as fantasy.
Yeah.
The science is not explained and makes no sense.
Yeah.
The ties to, like, King Arthur and magic and all that are there, and then, like, you have these other elements that get introduced to you, like you're building a mythology for Cybertron and for all these things that is at odds with the existing histories or mythologies of Cybertron and these other things from other media that already exist. So if you're a big fan of these Transformers movies, I think you're going to love this one. If you are not a big fan of these Transformers movies, it's probably not worth your time. And if you are a fan of Transformers from other media, you're probably going to be really annoyed because, like, some of the better, like, one of the best ideas in Transformers Dumb is Unicron. Transformers the movie was a ton of fun. And the fact that they have given him a very, very different identity and presence and everything else, I think it won't fly with, and especially because people, like, see the ads and they see this technology that looks like Unicron technology, and they're like, oh my god, it's gonna happen. And when you actually find out what the deal is with Unicron, I think most people are gonna be like, oh, well, that's dumb. So,
which, by the way, I feel like Tony Hale's character is actually kind of the audience to an extent. Like, because there's a scene where he's screaming physics and, like, trying to, like, get everyone else in the film to believe him about science, and clearly there's a little bit of an emotional thing there that Michael Bay's clearly dealing with the fact that he, I think, knows that it's complete insanity.
Yeah. And again, like, we talked about this in the first part, but, like, this feels like the movie where Michael Bay was just like, okay, I'm gonna make fun of Michael Bay.
It is 100% Bayhem. You, like, just every shot, that every single cut, every single thing in this film is basically someone parroting Michael Bay. Like, if all I watched in my entire life was Michael Bay films, and then somebody gave me like $175 million to make a picture, this would be this film. Like, if I knew nothing else, no literature, no references, had someone,
except Shakespeare, apparently.
Well, no, well, also King Arthur, like, but only King Arthur in the way that, like, somebody explained to me.
If you had a pop-up book
through a couple tweets, which, by the way, that's, I guess,
that's a plot point. That's
a weird plot point, considering she had a horrible father who was a King Arthur, basically obsessed, insane person. Basically, it was very Indiana Jones, Dad.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I will give him the fact that it basically feels like Henry Jones.
Yeah,
like, And to an extent, it feels like Henry Spencer from Psych, where in the first season you meet Sean, and he's like, my father was terrible, and he never paid attention to me, and blah, 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 blah. And then later on, as you actually, like, look back at the flashbacks over the life of that series, it was like, actually, Henry wasn't so bad for the most part. Like, he was kind of a jerk, but, like, not a terrible father.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels the same way here. It's like, we're told immediately, like, her father has apparently just died because his belongings are still there, but the mother is asking whether she wants any of his stuff or whether it should all go off to the university.
Yeah.
And he apparently has just died, and yet, like, his daughter is speaking ill of him. His wife has all these friends over, and while his wife is respectful of his memory, she's clearly not in mourning, and all of her friends are just fucking awful.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't care what the relationship is, if your dad just died and your mom's friends are, like, coming over for tea and talking shit about him, like, what?
And they're clearly just having, like, and then she comes over and all they do is talk about when are you getting a boyfriend? Are you bringing over?
Yeah.
And then they finally bring over Mark Wahlberg, which that scene was completely incredulous. They're trying to search for this a clue to find this other thing. Yeah. They both go up into his her father's office and start destroying it. Not looking like, something falls over or whatever. It might be in something.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminds me of, and I can't remember exactly what the context was, but there was a scene from Wet Hot American Summer where they were, like, looking for something, and they just, like, tear into the room, and it's just everybody like, just screaming incoherently, and it's like, ah!
Yeah, which is making fun of those scenes. Yeah. But this was like that. They literally, like, Mark Wahlberg walks into a room, first thing he does is pick up a Etruscan horse or something, I forget what it was, and throws it on the ground.
He's like, crazy old scientists always hide stuff inside of these, and smashes it.
Which is hilarious because that actually was one of the big bits in The Mummy last night that I watched. So literally, like, somehow it was just hidden. One of the jewel or something was hidden there.
Well, and that's the other thing I liked was where she's just like, oh, look behind the picture frames, and he's like, no, just kick it. And he, like, takes down this, like, painting that's clearly just a canvas painting, and he kicks his foot through it, and it's like, you just kicked through canvas.
Which, by the way, they're looking for a very large object.
Yeah.
They're not looking actually for a clue. I forgot. They're not actually looking for They're actually looking for the physical object.
Yeah, for the staff.
And they're kicking in paintings, and they're destroying very small objects.
Yeah.
Like, and then they just randomly, there's a cubbyhole behind an antique, armoire. And there's like, no, let's not move it. Let's just throw it.
Yeah.
Like, literally both of them basically pick it up and throw it half across the room. Oh, and by the way, all the women are downstairs,
just assuming that these are sex noises.
That they're destroying each other, basically. Yeah. Like,
it's like, you know what? If these are my sex noises, then somebody call the police.
Yeah.
Like,
this is not.
That's not a healthy relationship.
There's no. But what I love too is that. It was completely, like, within the film, it was like, that's logical.
Yeah,
that, like,
exactly.
This scene existed in this world of Michael Bay that during this film. Like,
the whole movie is so far over the top that level of absurdity is actually, it's fine.
And what I loved, everybody in our theater, there's only a handful of people, but there was, like, a guy behind him laughing his fucking ass off.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was the purest comedy, and like loving
fucking
it.
Buster Keaton.
And I was just, and like, to me, I was just like, oh, there's a handful of scenes in this film that had a like a little bit of a laugh, but I don't know if there's maybe there's one or two I'll give that it was an actual hearty laugh.
I will give him the thing that we talked about before, that, like, clearly Michael Bay thinks that, like, the prim and proper English accent being used for, like, vulgarity or for something incredibly dumb, like, is hilarious. There are a couple of, like, Anthony Hopkins lines in particular where he delivers something totally absurd with such gravitas and such a self-satisfied look on his face that you're just really like, okay, that was okay, that was funny.
Yeah.
You know, where you that, and again, like, it's just like the thing with the music with Cogsman and the organ, like, it works, like, the first time.
Yeah.
And then it wears its welcome out and it keeps going.
Yeah.
But there were some moments. There were definitely some moments.
But this film was 100% written. It was like as if it was written by artificial intelligence.
Trying to design a Michael Bay movie.
Design a Michael Bay film that was specifically made for the most stereotypical lowbrow middle America. Like, there was no piss jokes, but there was a lot of like, you know, sex joke and like all these things across the board. The fact that this film will probably open with $75 million,
it's a mixed bag.
Did it already? I actually used it.
No, it opens. Today's the first day. That's why I was supposed to see it last
night.
Last night at the 10 o'clock screening or whatever. But yeah, no, it's a mixed bag because of course it's going to open at $75-80 million, but it's also going to open at $50 million less than the previous installment, and it's projected to be the lowest Transformers opening of the franchise.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see. You know, they have a bunch of stuff planned. They've got a Bumblebee spinoff planned. They have a bunch of sequels, including the ones that are set in like ancient times and Nazi Germany and things. And it'll be interesting to see if this movie underperforms relative to the other movies. Will that harm the franchise, or will it just be, well, Michael Bay's moving on now anyway, so we get at least 2 more movies to get the thing back on track because, like, we can blame Michael Bay for underperforming and then just hand it off to the next person.
I mean, also, I assume that they also look at it in a larger picture of this film has grossed probably
the franchise has grossed $4.5 billion.
So you know that they can have one or two underperformers that, you know, to build a. Because this also,
the other thing is, it's not going to be a bomb.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the other thing too is that this entire film was very much. It was very much a again, Batman versus Superman humorously, where it was like, nope, this is building a new world that is going to continue, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you feel about it. But this is one film that I had to keep saying to myself, just because you hate it doesn't mean it's doesn't mean it's not, it shouldn't exist.
Right, yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and again, I actually went in expecting it to be so much worse. Again, I haven't seen a Transformers movie since the first one. I loved the Transformers growing up, and so when I watched the first one, I was like, it's not really my Transformers. It's fine, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then in the intervening years, I haven't watched any of the sequels, and everything I've heard about them is that they're just fucking atrocious.
Yeah.
And so, like, I expected truly unwatchable. And so, like, going in with that bar, I was like, this was not an enjoyable film going experience in any way, shape, or form, but it wasn't painful.
See, for me, it actually reached that peak of it's so bad that it was actually started being good, but it's one of those, like, it bothers me because I know that Michael Bay can make competent film. It's like, it's clearly, to me, this is very much the Scorsese and Spielberg problem of... He's made so much money that basically I would assume that basically all the places are just like, here's what your budget is, have at it.
Yeah.
We're not going to even be on set and look at it. No one from I guess Hasbro. I don't know.
Paramount.
Looked over it or whatever and just didn't care. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, that's what happened to me. That's what happened with Scorsese and whatever. Is just like, clearly they're just like, okay, you know, you're going to make this much money, and then that's all that matters. So
I have a Cars 3 movie poster sitting in my mailbox.
Nice.
Sorry.
No worries.
But no,
that's literally it's just.
And there is a weird kind of different bar for filmmakers who have got so much success that now they can make the movie they want to make with no interference, because it's like, okay, well, you're succeeding or failing literally on your own merits. There's nobody who is like, there's nobody coming in and telling you this isn't Star Wars enough and then firing you with 3 weeks left to go in the shoot. I
mean, this isn't to me. I mean, this is like one of the benefits. Like, somewhere ago, like sometimes the studio system and the multiple people you have that can possibly tell you no or yes is a good thing. Like, personally, that scares me as a person who's starting to like work on his own documentary film. I'm actually bringing people on that, giving them this, that you can tell me no on these things, because I'm terrified of the idea that, you know, it's just my thoughts and the, like, I think that like Bay definitely needs that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he can make The Rock, which is one of the best action films of all time, and you know, it was decently written. I mean, that's the other problem too, is that whoever the fucking writer was on this,
Akiva Goldsman, who is
yeah,
look at his resume sometime.
and
He
it makes complete
and
sense.
he's almost always, you know, like a writer's room with a bunch of people, but he'll
Yeah.
be the head writer. He wrote.
Oh yeah, this was definitely. I should
He wrote
correct
Spider-Man 3.
the writers, because there's no way that one person wrote this, because
Akiva Goldsman.
there's no.
It's, if you looked at it, there's a screenplay credit, and it's like Akiva Goldsman and then 4 names that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Goldsman is one of these dudes. He did Spider-Man 3. He did probably Jonah Hex.
Yeah.
He did a rewrite on the Avengers. I don't think he got the head screenwriting credit, because obviously that was a Whedon thing. But he's one of these, like, and he is a guy who constantly gets called into writers' rooms to like be a fixer.
Remember back in the day when you know, like. Was it Crimson Tide or was it Hunt for Red October? I'm trying to remember. Where like you had like the fixers were like people like John Sayles.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh, we need to smarten this film up and bring it in, so we bring in
Aaron
you know,
Sorkin.
oh, Tarantino. Yeah, I mean, like Tarantino, he's done that on film,
Yeah.
you know, and things like that. It's like
Michael Chabon does it.
yeah, no, I mean, so you have smart people, and it seems like
Michael
now
Chabon
it's like,
actually does it for Hasbro now, because
it's hilarious.
why not?
Okay, definitely, but the
didn't touch this
dialogue
one,
in this
clearly.
film seems like, and even for the characters, it's like they're like, okay, so this is what the scene is. Everybody pitch your best like paragraph, and we're gonna just take the best one. And it's like written by clearly more than 5 people, but like. And they just piece that together, because you have Anthony Hopkins' character who's senile and insane 1 second, and then a brilliant, well-spoken guy another second, and then he's in the car with a robot and he's singing along with hip hop and swearing and flipping. Do you notice he flipped off people? It's like,
and he called Hot Rod a bitchin' ride.
Yeah,
that was a thing. Hot Rod, who's French in this movie for some reason.
Yeah.
I will say he
has a French accent. He's not French, remember?
That's right.
Actually, he's like, I hate the accent.
Yeah.
Like, but I'm like, okay.
The other thing is, I will say, kind of a weird, neat visual cue that I think was intentional, and if not, whatever. In Transformers the movie, when he was introduced, Hot Rod had, like, he had the triple exhaust things under his car. And when he transformed, those turned into guns that were on his wrists. They looked like Wolverine's claws, basically. And his weapon, his like magic time stop weapon thing, when he holds it up and the barrels glow, there were 6 little points of light. And I think that's supposed to be a nod to the triple things that he had on each arm and the
you know, and then you know, everything we've talked about 2 times now for a half hour. hopefully the first.
There actually wasn't that much repetition. So if we,
all of this could have just been. Oh, okay. So it's it's 6. So it's a round number. Like that's the thing. Like Michael Bay. Like, you know, we were talking about. I don't know if it was on camera now. You'd be like, it'd be interesting to actually have a film like this in a really serious film class to dissect it. You know, like an NYU film. Like, you know, really analyze it and discuss it, because to me this film speaks so much. It's you know, it's obviously Michael Bay is, you know, up there with, you know, God, I'm trying to think of the other guy that does, the guy who does Battleship.
Bruckheimer,
and I guess Bruckheimer is probably the closest thing as
Scots.
well. The Scots,
not Tony Scott.
The
his
lesser
brother, who's more famous, who did Blade Runner.
Yeah. Anyway, but
Alien, Ridley Scott.
Yes. Who actually can do really good work, but like Bruckheimer, I mean, fucking hell.
Yeah.
But it's so American, and it represents like everything.
Yeah.
America. And I mean, it's like this. It could literally mean nothing at all, or it could mean lots of things, and I don't. But I actually lean towards
probably not.
I don't think anything. You know, there's this thing that's like there's nothing on film that if you have like auteur directors, you know, like there's nothing in a frame that isn't there on purpose. Like
Mhm.
they're direct, and then this is like I
think this, and that's true technically with Bay. That
Yeah.
There's nothing in the frame that isn't there on purpose, but
'Cause
his purpose is basically.
The problem is that probably not, because literally probably everything is green screen. So like someone made the decision somewhere along the way to make sure that it's not like, oh, just you're driving down a street in Detroit, and oh, there's a sign on the wall, and that just happened to maybe be there. Like, oh, there's a fact that there's a McDonald's on that corner may mean something. You know, he's speaking to this or whatever. No, because he put it CG there. Which,
All right.
Yes.
So, if we magically somehow fix the audio on the other half of this, then there will be another half. Otherwise, we may try to get together, watch this, and then think, what didn't we talk about that was actually worth talking about?
Yeah.
So, but I'm Russ Burlingame for the Emerald City Video Podcast.
I'm Zach Roberts.
and we're introducing ourselves now in case we don't get the other one fixed.
Yeah.
So, thanks for listening.